Welcome to the first of the webinar series jointly provided by the Association for Nursing Professional Development and Sigma. Today's presentation is titled Promoting Resilience, Mindful Practice. My name is Regina Camacho from the ANPD National Office, and I will be serving as today's moderator. On the left-hand side of the ANPD webinar screen, you should see the handout associated with this webinar, a refresh button, and a link to the webinar evaluation. At the conclusion of the webinar, click refresh and then select the evaluation. If you do not see the refresh button at the end of the webinar, simply exit the viewing screen and relaunch. Once you have completed the evaluation, your certificate will be placed in the grades section under the My Learning tab in the Professional Development Center. No link to the evaluation will be sent out. Throughout the presentation, you can submit questions through the Zoom Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We want this to be interactive, so we encourage you to ask questions. We have allotted time to address your questions at the end of the presentation. It is my privilege to introduce our speakers, Dennis Doherty and Michelle Schuster. Dennis Doherty is a board-certified nursing professional development specialist at Boston Children's Hospital, BCH. He facilitates and oversees nursing orientation and onboarding, coordinates the evidence-based practice mentorship program, facilitates interprofessional leadership development, and manages the organization's Healthy Work Environment Initiative. In an effort to support his colleagues on the front line at BCH, Dennis led the planning, development, and implementation of the three-part Promoting Resilience webinar series. This series has been adapted to share with the ANPD and Sigma audience. Michelle Schuster works as a staff on the inpatient hematology oncology unit at Boston Children's Hospital and as an adjunct facility at several Boston area colleges. She has specific interest in self-care, resiliency, and PTSD in nurses. Michelle is a co-developer of HEART, the Hematology Oncology Bone Marrow Transplant Advancing Resiliency Team, a program that provides real-time support to oncology nursing staff. And she is also a co-developer of the Promoting Resilience series offered at Boston Children's. I will now turn the session over to our presenters.
Thank you, Regina.
Thank you.
We're going to use menti.com today to make this presentation a little interactive. So if you watch it on a computer and you have a phone, or you just want to open up another web browser, you can go to www.menti.com and you can enter the code. It's going to ask you to put in the code 728192, and it should allow you to follow the presentation on the phone, participate in the interactive questions and polls that we will have during the presentation, and it will also allow you to give us hearts or thumbs up or sometimes thumbs downs.
We want your feedback.
Yeah. And it also is great because you could screenshot something that you see and have it on your phone. So I'm just going to leave it there for a couple of, maybe a minute for folks to log in. And I'm going to share that me and Michelle, we both work at Boston Children's Hospital, but we met probably about 2 years ago when she was a participant in the hospital's evidence-based practice mentorship program, which I coordinate, one of the leaders of it. Really, this is sort of program has been generated from her clinical question that she asked a couple of years ago now, right, Michelle?
Yeah, I asked a question a few years ago and I'm still working on it. So I have a really big interest in nurses' self-care and well-being, and I was a few years ago curious about if there was best practices to support nurses who might have PTSD due to work-related situations. So through an evidence-based practice project and now through a fellowship program I'm in at my hospital, like I said, asked a question and it just keeps rolling. So Dennis and I were talking about how in the literature, resilience has been mentioned as such an important way to help protect nurses and healthcare providers. And we were kind of asking, well, why don't we have that at Boston Children's, which is where we work at. So through conversations, we really just decided to collaborate. So I'm a staff nurse. I work inpatient on the HEMONC unit, and Dennis works in professional development, and we got together and created a program. It originally was in person, but now we've adapted to be online, and we're very excited to offer this content to you all today. So thank you for joining us.
So we don't have any relevant financial or disclosures or conflicts of interest to share. And realistically, we're looking hopefully that most of you will leave this session with information that enhances, validates, and causes a change in your practice. Hopefully you'll implement something that we talk about into your day-to-day practice. Something I want to ask, we've already jumped up to that question, is when your first reaction to this session when you heard about promoting resilience, what was your first reaction? Was it, wow, just what I needed? Was it, I should be teaching this? Namaste. If you're already an expert, if you're already doing stuff, not really sure what this is all about, but I'll check it out. Or if you, realistically, if you were like, eye roll, you can be real with us. We're looking for real. Seems like a lot of people are like, just what I needed. Some of us are experts, could be teaching this themselves. Glad you're joining us. Tell us what else we could share at the end of this program too. Some of you exploring, and there's a few of you who are eye rolling. And I'd be honest that there was a point in my career where I think I was an eye roller. Me and Michelle have another thing in common other than this evidence-based practice mentorship program. We both got our graduate degrees with a concentration in nursing education from Framingham State University. And one of our professors, shout out to Dr. Bechtel, she started each session with a 5-minute meditation. The first time I did it, I was like, what? The second time I did it, I think I was still like, what? But by the end of the, midway through the first semester, after battling traffic to get from Boston to Framingham, Massachusetts, it seemed to be just exactly what I needed. And it's something that I think I've taken from there, and I've put into my, I try to put it into my practice. Michelle, you had the same reaction, a different reaction?
At first I had like a half an eye roll. I won't commit to a full eye roll. But at first I was like, okay, what is this? Let's just start class, I'm ready. But then I realized that taking a minute for that mindful moment in meditation was actually a great way to center before starting something else. So it became definitely just an, oh wow, just what I needed for me as well.
Yeah. Great. So a lot of us are like, just what I needed. A few of you are eye rolling. If you're eye rolling, we just ask that you allow yourself to be surprised. See if there's something that is helpful for you as you move forward here. And so this is something that give us a heart if you've seen this, fear versus learning versus growth. This is like just going around. I got to be honest, I saw it on social. And I took it, shamelessly stole it from social. I don't know who to credit this for. If anyone does, tell me, because I'll credit them. But it's really specific to COVID, and we want to sort of frame some of the stuff that we're going to talk about today with this fear zone, learning zone, growth zone. This is really growth mindset, right? We talk about a growth mindset. I think over the last couple of years, I don't think I've gone a week without hearing someone talk about growth mindset. But especially with relation to COVID, if we're in the fear zone, you might be complaining frequently. You might get mad easily. You're sort of in this like emotional thing, forwarding messages that you receive. And then if you're in the learning zone, you might, you might identify your emotions. You might evaluate, what your information that you're sharing, to make sure that it's evidence-based. You might recognize that everyone's just trying to do their best to get through this and survive. And then that final, out there is the growth zone, and it's, folks are present, folks are trying to, keep it as happy emotional state. And so we sort of have this framework that I've seen in my organization. I've seen it other places. But, I think it's important, to just not just say, be in a growth zone, or move from fear to learning. It's really, this is I think an opportunity for us to sort of pause and self-reflect and think about who we are, and where we are. And I think that when we talk about fear, and we talk about stress and anxiety, this COVID situation, it's like really the perfect storm, okay? There's like three things that I'm gonna just quickly talk about here, right? It's unpredictable. We don't know what's happening next week. We don't know when we're going to be able to, kind of go back to a normal life, if there ever will be one. It feels like we don't know what our work is going to be like next week or next month. It's just unpredictable. I think especially as healthcare providers and as nurses, there was a lot of changes, fast changes. So it's almost unpredictable on a day-to-day basis when you went into your work environments, what you would be asked to do, or when to do it, or what you would do it with. So change has been challenging, and it's unpredictable. It's also uncontrollable. We don't have, we can't control it. We often can't control the parameters that we're working in. So that makes it really, really challenging, whether it's at home, whether it's at work, whether there's not a lot that we can control here. And then the other thing I think that really makes it kind of like the perfect storm is that it's sustained. What are we on, week 10? This is the 10th week of social distancing, of this pandemic, and it really is the perfect storm for stress, anxiety, and fear. I do like this. This is a sign this is out of Michelle's unit where she works, actually, and it's coronavirus. It's on us to demonstrate compassion, choose knowledge over fear, use only what we need, understand each other's fears, protect the vulnerable, and lead with empathy. I like the message. It's real positive. I think in terms of this, of the pandemic, something that I hear a lot, so the analogy I'm hearing in places is, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And while I get that analogy, I don't love it because personally, I don't know anyone who just got thrown into running a marathon. You're preparing for it, you're anticipating it, when 26.2 miles, where the finish line is. You're able to, you have control over how you run and how you hydrate and what your nutrition is. It's really, I think, we've said it, it's unprecedented, it's challenging times. But what I want to do is ask you right now, some of you already answered it, if pause and reflect, in which zone are you in? Are you in the fear zone? Are you in the learning? Are you in the growth zone? Let's see where we are as an audience, as a group today. And I think, and there's no right or wrong answer to this too.
I like that somebody from our chat brought up a good point. R. Clark said that it's really good to know what zone we're in, but also to help us understand those around us. And that's spot on, and that's something important too. Yeah.
So a lot of folks see themselves in the growth zone, which is great. A lot of us are learning, and some of us are in that fear zone. I think no matter what zone you're in, no matter where you are, it's important to acknowledge where you are and maybe see ways that you can move to the next phase. Or if you're in the growth zone and you know someone who might be in a fear or learning zone, maybe you're able to help them get to the next zone. We talk about being stuck and unstuck, and I'm going to be on all these webinars, so I'm going to talk about stuck versus unstuck in a couple of different ways. But I want you to ask yourself, are you stuck in the fear zone? Are you stuck in a learning zone? And how do we move forward? Because if we're stuck, we're not able to move forward. And the goal is that, for all of us to get to where where we want to be in this situation. And so I think that using mindfulness practices, using some of the things that we'll share and talk about later on in the presentation, this can really help us to get unstuck in this current state. Got one more thing that I'm going to share, another framework. I think these frameworks are just good to help us sort of understand where we're at, so that we can move forward. This is from Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. This is a really basic concept, not rocket science. But Covey says that we have 2 circles. We have a circle of influence. We have a circle of concern. We share this in a lot of the leadership programs that we teach here. And I think it's important to just sort of take stock in. Our circle of influence is what we can control. So things we can control is within our circle of influence. And there's a lot of things that we can't control, and that is in our circle of concern. And Covey says that we're proactive and approach things in a proactive and a positive manner, we actually can increase our circle of influence and minimize our circle of concern. But if we're reactive and we kind of approach things from a negative point of view, that actually makes our circle of influence smaller. It makes our circle of concern, things that we might be concerned about, but we don't really have any control over. It makes that sort of more powerful in our lives. So I love this sort of framework to think about, and we talk about this around here. And I have a colleague, Karen, who'd say, "Is that in your circle of concern or your circle of influence?" And it's just basically another way of saying, do you have any control? Do you have any control over that? And worry about what you can control. So really, what I want to ask you is, on your Menti, what is in your circle of influence? Just leave this up for a few minutes. We got my reactions, my emotions. We see educating myself and others. Reactions, responses, behavior, how I react. I went over it. Let me go back. I want to see those. And so we have, doesn't seem like it's scrolling for me, but what I see on the screen here, and I'd love to download these to see what other things are. I see we can control, our reactions or actions. We control our responses, control what we learn. And sometimes I think that we have things up here that might say, we can control our emotions. I'd say your emotions are your emotions. And you have every right to, the emotions that you have. I think, trying to think about things like how we react in what we do. So I'd say that one of the things we can control potentially is our practice of, trying to practice mindfulness. So this is scrolling now, so I just want to give it another minute to see what pops up here. We got 200 responses, but I can't see many of them. But we'll move on to the next one. My words, how we react, how we respond. Your sleep, I like that. Yeah. Your sleep, what I do. Right, this is great. So what's in your circle of influence? And when you find yourself challenged, just think about what's in your circle of influence, what's in your circle of control. Michelle, you want to tell us a little bit about resiliency?
Yes, I'd love to. So we are going to switch now to talking about resiliency and what it is and how it can help everybody in their professional practice and in your personal life as well. So resiliency is the ability to adjust to adversity, maintain equilibrium, retain some sense of control over the environment, and continue to move on in a positive manner. we really like this definition. And thinking back to the slide we just talked about, resiliency helps you retain and maintain some sense of control in your environment. So it really helps you think about more of your proactive focus. So next, we're going to really, I want you guys to take a step back and reframe your mindset. Let's think about the way we think about resiliency. So maybe this is a new concept for you, or maybe this is something you've been practicing for years. However you're coming to it, this is just something we want to break it down. So we're going to look at resiliency through a different lens. So I started my career in Houston, and a palm tree just kind of makes sense for this analogy. So whether you're in Houston or whether you've never seen palm trees, whether you have it a lot, this is a pretty universal example. So we're going to think of resiliency like a palm tree. So what do I mean by that? So when violent winds or hurricanes devastate coastal communities, so many times palm trees are able to survive. So how is that? Well, it's because of their morphology. So the way that palm trees are made allows them to bend and not rigidly resist the wind. So instead, by having gradual bending, they're able to survive those really bad winds. So resiliency helps us to be like palm trees, and it really allows us to be able to be malleable with our minds and be able to adjust to adversities without breaking. So we might not be able to control our environment or certain policies or things around us, but we can learn to adapt our minds to protect ourselves, and we can think about responding proactively rather than reactively. And resiliency is one way to really help get you into that mindset to be able to transform any stressors into opportunities for growth. So let's get a little bit more into resiliency, and let's look at what it is. So as professionals, this is geared not just towards nurses, this can be for all healthcare professionals, but this is what the literature shows us, how it matters and how it can make an impact. So resiliency has been proved to improve handling of job-related stressors and challenges. It can decrease the work-related distress. It can increase balance, joy, and harmony in your work. And it has been shown to improve coping in relation to stress, anxiety, burnout, emotional exhaustion. And it's also linked to more favorable patient outcomes because it's able to decrease personalization. So really, resiliency is important for so many ways. It can help improve your practice, but it's also something that you can use in your personal life as well, and it can help you have better outcomes in all areas of your life. So we're gonna move on to the next slide. All right, so we're gonna talk just a little bit about PTSD in nurses. So the research also shows that PTSD has been occurring in nurses before, during, and most likely we're gonna see it after COVID-19. So I've been doing a lot of research into this, and like Dennis mentioned at the beginning of our presentation, this question is what really sparked my interest in finding ways to promote nurses' well-being and promote individuals' well-being. But something that came out of this literature review that was just published that I worked on are 4 major themes. And one of those themes are interpersonal strengths. So one piece that I wanted to pick out is that resiliency was found to be a protective interpersonal strength and an important factor, I guess, against the development of PTSD symptomatology. So resiliency is really a very important concept that can have huge implications for individuals. And the research is supporting this, and it's something that individuals can practice, organizations can support, and depending on what your role is, we can all work to help each other and to build a more resilient workforce and more resiliency within ourselves.
I just want to shout out, if you didn't see it, that's Michelle's publication, hot off the press, of our integrative review. So congratulations to you.
Why, thank you.
You know a thing or two about this.
Just a little bit, yes. All right, so next we're going to talk about mindfulness. So if you guys are sitting there and thinking, okay, resiliency sounds great, but how do we do it? How do we start it? How do we become resilient individuals? Well, mindful practice and practicing mindfulness is one way to bolster your resiliency. So that's what we're going to talk about next. So a definition that we really like is by Dr. John Kabat-Zinn, and he said that mindfulness is paying attention in a particular way on purpose to the present moment non-judgmentally. And Dr. John Kabat-Zinn has done a lot of work on mindfulness in healthcare and in medicine, and he's really a trailblazer on this topic. So if you wanted to find more, he's definitely somebody to look up. But we liked this definition, and we just felt like mindfulness is really important because it helps get us out of that autopilot mode. Thinking back to that image that Dennis had up about the truck and being stuck, it helps you become unstuck, and it really helps you to become aware of what's going on around you. So let's look a little bit more about what mindfulness entails. It includes being fully present, aware of where we are, and not overwhelmed by what's going on around us. It includes being awake to the fullness of your life by engaging all of your senses. And it also includes focusing on the frequency, not the length of activity or moment. So what we mean by that last piece is some people might not have an hour to practice yoga every day or even every week. But if you just focus on the frequency, short interventions of mindful practice has been proven to make a big impact, and it can actually change your brain. And we're going to talk about that in a few slides later. But really just taking a few moments every day to be mindful and to practice mindfulness in whatever capacity feels good for you guys is really an important concept. So a little bit every day can go a long way. So bringing it back to healthcare a little bit, this is going back to that literature because that's something that I love to do, but it's something that really matters in 3 domains in particular. So mindfulness can help nurses and individuals have greater situational awareness, enhance your communication skills, and it can also improve your coping. So just looking at this overall, it actually can help you have better patient outcomes. It can help you have better relationships within your organization, and it can help you as an individual because when you're less distracted or when you're in front of a patient doing an assessment or if you're getting report or handoff, by being mindful and by saying, okay, I'm actually going to listen to that person in front of me and I'm not going to have my mind going in 20 different directions. It's really important just to come be focused. You can focus on what's in front of you, and it can reduce errors, it can increase your attention to others' well-being, and it overall helps you to have a better and a deeper understanding of clinical situations.
I think there's so much, there's probably a lot of other things on people's minds. Like if this is all encompassing, and I think that when we're delivering care, when we're doing, something important, we want to be in that present moment. We don't want to be thinking about something that happened yesterday or something that's might or might not happen tomorrow. We want to be like in that given time. And so I think just, for nurses, it's super important to really be honed in on being present in each moment.
Exactly.
We have another poll. And so we want to know, where is your stress today, right now? Is it work? Is it watching news? You can rate it on your sliding scale. Is it what you're seeing on social media? Is your family driving you crazy? Do you miss your colleagues, or are your colleagues driving you crazy? Are you just sick of social isolation? Are you homeschooling? This is something I can relate to, homeschooling and working. Or is it, food and essentials and shelter and your basic needs? See where people are most stressed. We done this a bunch of times, and it always seems to be a couple of different places that creep up here. We got coming up on like 200 responses. It was great. And so what I do love is that this web isn't all the way out to the end on any of these, which is great. So work seems like it's something that's stressful, and watching the news, and the social isolation thing is getting old. Even I'm an extrovert, and I have friends that are introverts, and it's starting to get old for them. And so I think, this only allows us to put 8 things up here. If there's something else that's bringing stress, we'd love to hear about it. And you can put it into the chat. But I think that, some of this stuff is in our circle of influence. Some of this stuff is in our circle of control. There was a point where if I wanted to, I could watch a White House press conference. I could watch my governors, my mayors. There's a weekly press conference from my hospital. Like, I could tune in to hear information about this almost 24/7, right? And that was driving me a little bit crazy. So I sort of said, I can, sort of influence how I consume news. So I sort of backed off on what I was watching and when. And then, when this first went live, when COVID first, the first couple of weeks, social media was a huge stressor for my wife. And I'd watch her on the phone and she'd be like, see her getting like physically upset from, I'm like, what are you reading? What do you, and so, she actually took social off her phone. And that was something that was, sort of helped her. It was something that she could control. So some of this we can control, some of this we can't. But it's always interesting to see where we are. So thanks for responding. 300 response. I like that.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Let's do a little drop in science here for you. Let's just talk about mindfulness and resiliency and the effects it can have on the brain. We're not going to do an ANP class for you, but we will just highlight some stuff. So stress response, right? What happens, our amygdala, it sends a distress signal to our hypothalamus, and that activates our sympathetic nervous system. It sends signals to our autonomic nerves, to the adrenal glands, and your adrenal glands are pumping epinephrine, that adrenaline, into your bloodstream. And then also cortisol is released by the adrenal glands. This is our fear and stress. This is like a fight or flight response. It's good. Cortisol is good, keeps our body on high alert, right? But that that epinephrine, the adrenaline, is in the short term. That cortisol lingers. And cortisol is interesting because it does have effects on our body, right? So we do this fight or flight thing. For the most part, it's great. Keeps us on our toes, keeps us safe. But this cortisol, when it lingers, it can increase your heart rate, it increases your blood pressure. It works in the long term, like I said. And then it could also sort of lead to dysregulated physical changes. So one of the great things about mindfulness practice is that it kind of helps that, right? It helps our amygdala become less hijacked. It helps our brain regions. It actually can help with attention. It can help with executive functioning, that problem solving. It can make our brains gray matter. It can change the gray matter. It can help our memory. It can help our sense of selves. It can regulate our emotions. And it also just helps us sort of be present and pay attention to detail, notice what's actually happening around us, particularly in stressful situations, right? We're in a stressful situation, you just sort of can be like, things could be happening and you're not picking up on it. So some of the benefits there again from mindful practice. We already got an answer for this. This is interesting. How frequently do you engage in mindful practice activities? So some of you said you should be teaching this, bring it on, right? That's great. Are you doing this daily? Are you doing it several times a week? Never? Let's see what the group says before we share some of our practical ideas. Got a lot of people saying they're doing this several times a week. Some are doing it every day. Awesome. Some are doing it less frequently, several times a month. Some are, aren't doing it at all. If you're not doing it at all, if you're doing it monthly or less, my challenge to you is to pick something that we're talking about here. You'll see that these aren't, they can be very quick strategies to sort of just tuning into the present moment. Yeah. 300 responses there. I love it. Okay.
Great.
All right, Michelle, I'll let you take it away.
All right, so now that we've talked about what resiliency is, what mindfulness is, how it can change your brain, let's actually talk about something practical. What can you guys walk away with? What can you say, ooh, I've never tried that, or I'm doing that all the time? So Dennis and I have compiled a few different options. So this first one, let's talk about, let's getting physical. Let's move those bodies. So this might be one way that people are thinking about maybe going on mindful walks, mindful hikes, doing workouts, doing yoga, cycling, different things like that. So we might just be in the exercise mode, but if we look at these workouts or look at taking care of your body through exercise as mindful moments and not being distracted, so maybe just focus on your workout, not being answering work emails as you're walking or checking something as you're trying to do your workout at home, just being in that moment, focusing on your body, making it a mindful moment. That's just one way to incorporate mindfulness into physical activity.
Yeah, and I think that when we teach this, this seems to be like the common denominator. People tend to go to physical activity as their opportunity to practice mindfulness. So they're citing yoga, they're citing going on runs, they're citing hikes. And so if you're doing that, by all means, keep doing it. If you want to do it, start doing it, whatever. But we also want to highlight little things we can do in our days that could be helpful. So there is a lot of opportunities to do meditation. There's apps, most of them are free. Some of them are, like the paid ones are free right now. For healthcare workers, Headspace is free for the rest of the year if you sign up as a healthcare worker. There's a Calm app, 10% Happier. These are all things you can download in your iTunes store or your app store. And it's really important to know that there are 3-minute meditations. There are meditations that you can do while on a train if you commute to and from work on a train. It is not necessarily finding an hour in the most quietest place and having like a Zen moment. It's really just taking a little bit of time to check in. I love on Calm, the daily Calm. It's 10 minutes, and when I can do it, I try to do it. But also, if you don't want an app, you could also just go on YouTube, and there is tons and tons and tons of meditations. Some are long, some are short. So check out your apps, especially the free stuff.
All right. So the next thing is one key aspect of mindfulness is acknowledging your senses. So bringing it back to how to make regular moments mindful moments, or how to fit these new ways of looking at things into your daily routine without changing it dramatically. So let's think about touch. So hand hygiene, that's something that we are all doing a lot of these days. So what if we made washing your hands a mindful moment? Or what if we made using Purell a mindful moment? So when you're doing hand hygiene, feel the warmth of the water, feel the soap in between your fingers. Using the Purell, feel how it's different when it dries on your hands. Just taking those moments, stepping out of autopilot, doing a familiar routine, but looking at it with new eyes. That's what mindfulness is all about. We told you guys this wasn't going to be too hard, or there's going to be quick options for you guys, and this is one of them. Another one is touching your smartphone, feeling the sensations on your fingertips, or rubbing the fingertips of your hand, rubbing your fingertips on the same hand or maybe on a different hand, just really feeling the texture and feeling every groove, every bump. Those are just simple ways to incorporate touch as mindful moments.
When we started talking about this, Michelle told me that she uses her dishwashing as an opportunity to practice mindfulness, which I was like, I hate dishwashing.
It sounds a little crazy, right?
Yeah.
No, make it a mindful moment, Dennis. And I'm curious, have you yet done your dishes, and has your wife been very appreciative? But I mean, have you made it a mindful moment? Have you tried?
Have I tried? I have done it, and anytime I watch something, I think of you doing dishes and practicing mindfulness.
Yeah, so doing dishes used to be something that was just a stressor on my list of a million things that I have to do. But I decided I'm going to reframe my mindset around that. It was going to be a very simple thing. So my pots and pans that can't get thrown in the dishwasher that I have to wash by hands, I just decided, you know what, I'm going to try to do mindful dishwashing. And so I would just be reflective on the moments of remembering meals that I cooked or that my husband cooked for us while I was washing certain pans, or just feeling the warm water and the soap, and just it actually became very therapeutic. And by the end, not only am I more mindful, but I have a clean sink. So it was one way that was worked for me to incorporate touch as mindful moments.
All right. Let's talk about sounds. So we can mindfully listen. But we could also do some easy things. We could, if we're out for a walk, I've been going on a lot of hikes with my two sons, and I've been trying to help them hear the most distant sound, a bird or a plane flying overhead, something way off in the distance, and then reframe it and say, what's the closest sound we could hear? And maybe it was the bubbling brook that we were walking next to. We could really notice the nuance in someone's voice, their tone, their pitch, their accent. Just when we're talking to them. I think like as a nurse, when I'm getting a report from somebody, that's a great opportunity to tune in to really, really be present. First of all, they're telling me super important information. But if I'm thinking about what I'm going to do, the things I have to do in the next hour, or that I didn't get to lunch, or that I have to go to the grocery store after work, I'm not there, I'm not present. So really honing in on their words and really actively listening is really a great opportunity to hone in on what's important. Just water sounds is something that I'm finding that I find soothing. And I could even be just running the water, like when you're doing your dishes, right? So listening to that water next time that you're at your sink. If you're driving, you could listen to traffic sounds, and really just sort of, if you're outside, just sort of experiencing like the world sonically. What can you hear? The third part of this series is going to be the power of song. And so, I'd sort of been thinking about mindful listening, and something that I've noticed, I listen to a lot of music, I'm a music guy, and I find that I don't stay on a song for more than like a minute before I'm on to the next song. What's the next song I can put on my playlist? What's the next song I can put in my queue? So I've been really sort of purposeful about like being present with my music when I do get a chance to listen to it. So there's some opportunities to use sound and listening and hearing to practice mindfulness.
I really like this one. And coming from Texas to New England, to Boston, I don't know if you guys noticed, but Dennis has one of those Boston accents. I mean, how many people have picked up on that? I think it's really interesting to really notice the nuances and the accents in people's voices. So just thinking about listening fully to somebody when they're speaking to you in new ways, I think that's an interesting way to incorporate mindfulness.
I do. I know I have an accent, the Boston accent. If I run into anyone, ask me to tell you the Star Wars boss story, and you'll get a good Boston accent story.
Oh my goodness. Next one we're going to talk about is the breath. So when we talk about mindfulness, a lot of times thinking about exercise and breathing, those are more of what people think about when they think of practicing mindfulness. But this is something you can incorporate when you're on your commute to work, whether you're at home, before you come home, before you get out of your car to come in your house. This is just a really great way, I like saying it, but stepping out of autopilot, taking a few deep breaths. If you're somebody who likes to use the apps that we talked about to help you with that guided breathing and guided meditation, that's great. Or you can just do it on your own. Take a few deep breaths, put your hand on your chest and feel when you take a deep breath in and out, feel it rise and fall. Pay attention to the temperature of the air going in and out of your nostrils and feel the temperature difference. Or finally, if you can put your hand even on your stomach and just feel your breath, and taking time just to kind of slow down, focus on your breathing. And it's something that I do sometimes just to, when I'm feeling really busy, I'm like, okay, I'm going to take 3 really deep breaths and just recenter, refocus before I move on to the next thing. And it's something that's very helpful.
I want to share some online resources. And in our handout, we put a bunch of links, and these are linked there. So if you have the handouts, there's, ANA came out with a COVID self-care package for nurses. So you could check that out. Yale University has something kind of cool. It's called The Science of Wellbeing, and it's like a happiness course. And it's like a real, there's assignments. So if you have time and you wanted to really dive in, it's free. It's free to anyone who wants to do it. So I think the link is on the handouts there too. There's the Compassionate Care Initiative is an online program from the University of Virginia. There's a few mindful and few well-being resources that we also shared in our links. Institute for Healthcare Improvement has mindfulness resources. So, I think take what we are offering, but also go explore and find what works for you. I'm going to close with a poem.
Yes, so this is a poem called Two Wolves, and it's a Cherokee parable. Well, probably a few months ago when we were putting this presentation together and thinking about mindfulness, I was doing searches online and finding different ideas about mindfulness, and one website I was on talked about mindful poems, and I thought that was pretty unique. So I found this one and we really like it. So an old Cherokee chief was teaching his grandson about life. "A fight is going on inside me," he said to the boy. "It is a terrible fight, and it is between two wolves. One is evil. He is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, arrogance, self-pity, resentment, lies, false pride, self-doubt, and ego. The other is good. He is joy, peace, love, hope, humility, kindness, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. The same fight is going on inside you and inside every other person too." So the grandson thought about it for a minute, and then he asked his grandfather, "Which wolf will win?" The old chief simply replied, "The one you feed." So I think that's a really nice way just to think about what is in our circle of influence and what can we control, and how do we choose to show up as mindful individuals, and how can we make ourselves as the best that we can be so that we can go out and influence others and really maybe help those who aren't in the learning or the growth mindset, but those who are still in the fear phase, or just how do we show up and what are we going to choose? So I really like that, and I hope you guys are able to take that away, take something away that we shared with you today. Dennis, do you want to add anything else?
Yeah. To close it out, and we'll leave it up here, and I think, and then we'll go to our questions. But just to end, really the power of gratitude is so important. And even though these may be challenging times, we're asking everyone to look at something that they're grateful for, something that they're thankful for, that has maybe helped them through the COVID pandemic and beyond, and will continue to help. So feel free to share something that you're grateful for, and I'll leave this scrolling as responses come in. And I think that's it. So if there's any questions, I think we could field some questions.
Okay, one question came through. It says, "I love the example of mindfulness on the unit. Any other examples of how to incorporate that into a bedside shift?"
Yeah, we can. I'm sure Dennis has some ideas, but I can kind of speak from a few things that we've tried to incorporate on our units. If besides from, trying to tell everybody to have mindful moments when they're doing handoff and when they're maybe starting their shift Purelling, different things like that. We have daily safety rounds or huddles. And after the end of everybody talking about their high-risk patients or anything big that everybody needs to have situational awareness about, we close with just talking about a few good things that's happening that day. So whether it's somebody's having a bubble parade because they're getting to go home, or if somebody's, learned to take oral meds for the first time, whatever it might be, I'm talking from a very pediatric perspective, but it's definitely just making time to remember the good, even though there might be a lot of bad around, or a lot of fear around. So that's one way to kind of bring it back to mindful moments. Dennis, do you want to talk about what you did with the new grads with the tea ritual or the mindful?
Well, I have just some, I think maybe even a more practical thing that I'd share is the, we're so busy, and we might be bouncing from patient to patient, in which, trying to get things done, and we have to discharge, we have to transfer, we have to do teaching. And so we're moving. And, something that makes a lot of sense to me is, and I think I heard this from IHI, was like really just pausing before an encounter and just thinking to yourself, I'm going into this patient's room. What is the goal of this encounter? What am I here to do? Grounding yourself in, the present moment before you find yourself in there doing whatever you're doing on autopilot, and just really, I think, pausing before encounters in determining what's the intention. It doesn't have to be significant. It can just be, I'm going to go in here and check in on my patient right now, and make sure that they don't need anything. But that deliberate pause to think about the intentionality of that encounter, I think, is something that is, we could probably do this in life. Like maybe not also, maybe it's beyond nursing, maybe it's beyond hospitals, but that's one thing that comes to mind.
Purposeful pausing. I like it. All right. What other questions?
Another question we received is, how are you implementing this in your workplace? Do you have daily opportunities in groups or just train the trainer programs?
Yeah, I'd say, so there's two sides to this. This was originally something that we started that was going to be a live class. And so we basically were offering it as a, come all, anyone who wants to come can come. And then since COVID, we've sort of been offering this periodically for all staff. So it's, it's really, it's been sort of self-selection. I think that there are cohorts in our hospital that have used this and sort of, made it a train-the-trainer themselves. So I know of areas that are doing mindful moments on patient safety huddles, sort of similar to what Michelle was talking about. I know that we have staff who work in charge in resource roles who are supporting staff on front lines and have come to our programs to just learn strategies to use with their colleagues. And I think that from my perspective, I find that this is personal, and so I think that you, as a learner, I guess, or as a clinician, you have to come to what works for you. And so I think just being exposed to as much as possible is most beneficial. I will also share that the ability to do this over Zoom as webinars, we did basically the same program we've done a bunch of times for our nurses. And I've been impressed with the reach and the number of people that we've been able to connect with and share this with. We have nurses working in, satellites all around, like, Eastern Mass, basically. And we've been able to touch, get nurses involved from all of those different locations across shifts, et cetera.
Yeah. I think something to take away too is just that Dennis and I don't normally work together, but we were able to collaborate because of technology, and we really both had similar interests. So maybe thinking about who in your hospital is, maybe it's a staff nurse, maybe it's somebody else, but who can you go to that might have an interest in collaborating and bringing it to more people? So that's just one other way to be thinking about this too.
Why do you think mindfulness is an issue today, but not so much 20 years ago? Is it the culture, individuals, generations?
That's a super interesting question. And, I don't know if I can answer, today versus 20 years ago, but I think that, we're working, like, we're work society. We are just in nursing, right? Where we have patients that are sicker than ever. It's all of our patients that are in the hospital are in there because there's something significant going on. And so patients that maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago might have been in the hospital, they're at home. And I think that there's, it's sort of, I just think that the pressure to throughput, to get work done, I think it's just lent itself to this, concept of mindfulness. And I also think that, that the sort of evolution of being a highly reliable clinician, patient safety, medical errors, when did to err is human, that's 20 years old. And so the evolution of our, sort of way we think about, being reliable and safe in our care has evolved over that 20 years time too, since 99, 2000-ish. So I think that it's almost just a shift in the way we think about patient safety and errors probably is something that has contributed to this. A lot of organizations, there's a lot of focus on mindfulness and presence and well-being of staff.
And I'll quickly just throw in a line too. I think also a lot of research has been done showing that if you take care of the caregiver, the nurses, or whoever's at that front line, you do have better patient outcomes and you do have other less errors and more situational awareness. So I think people are really starting to realize the impact that caring for self and that mindful moments can have, and how it has a kind of a ripple effect, a trickle out effect. So if you take care of you, that's going to go forward and you're going to be able to show up as a more present clinician and so on and so forth. So I think that's also part of the answer as well. What do we got? 2 minutes left? Okay.
Yes, we have time for 1 or 2 more questions. What recommendations do you have for dealing with team members who do not want to have mindfulness and similar types of activities shared in team meetings? I want to be respectful of their preferences and also be mindful of how we can all grow.
It's a great question. I think Dennis teaches a class having difficult conversations. I think it's just, this is not going to be everybody's cup of tea. And I think that's important to recognize too. So some people might be very resistant to this kind of thinking, but doing the most good for the most people and teaching this to the staff that it's going to really change their life and their outlook, that's going to be a win. And maybe by association, the other coworkers might start to feel a shift in the healthcare culture a little bit too on your floor. And it's hard to say. So just really maybe coming to people asking, I want you to have an open mind about this. And mindfulness is not just about doing yoga for an hour, or just it's different ways. So maybe just coming to them with a little bit of the education or the science and the facts about how it can change your brain. Maybe that'll kind of grasp their interest. It's a good question.
Yeah, I think it's definitely not for everyone. I know plenty of people that they would answer eye roll at the beginning of this presentation, and I think that's fine. Like that, I think we have to support folks in the way that works for them. And if we're creating a culture, and if this is a change, we know that there's early adopters and there's laggers, and maybe at some point they'll come along with us and they'll want to participate. But I think that forcing it is not something that's going to necessarily be helpful. But I do think that people should be respectful of folks who want to practice this. So I do have a difficult conversation. If they're not being respectful, come talk to me. We can have the difficult conversation with them.
All right, that is all the time we have for questions.
Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Dennis and I are really appreciative that you chose to spend your time with us this afternoon, and we hope that it can make an impact in your lives and those that work and live around you.
Yeah, and we're doing 2 more. This is sort of part 1, and the next 2 sessions are going to relate to what we started talking about today, and they're going to, I think, be a little bit different than things that a lot of folks have participated in before. So please join us, and our contact info is on your handout. So reach out if you need any ideas or help or support.
Thanks so much.
Perfect. Thank you for participating in today's webcast, jointly provided by ANPD and Sigma. I would like to extend a special thank you to Dennis and Michelle for presenting today's session. Webinar recordings are available to ANPD members following the live webinar. An email will be sent out to our membership when the recording is available in the recorded webinars page. As a reminder, at the conclusion of this webinar, hit the refresh button, then select the evaluation on the left-hand side of your viewing screen. Again, if you do not see the refresh button, simply exit out of the viewing screen and relaunch the webinar. Once you have completed the evaluation, your certificate will be placed in the grade section under the My Learning tab in the Professional Development Center. No link to the evaluation will be sent out. We appreciate your feedback and input as we further develop ANPD's educational programming. Thanks for joining us and have a great day.